Hello and welcome everyone again. Thank you for joining our training. It's devoted to the topic of work with beginner learners. Today we will talk about the essence of the beginner learners. We will learn about effective tips and tricks that will help us to motivate and put our learners firmly on the way of succeeding and mastering their English language proficiency. However, it can be quite challenging to work with beginners. We will talk about that today, and I hope we will get some useful insights for us. Some important things before we start. I kindly ask you, unless you speak, put yourself on mute, not to create extra noise. As I have mentioned before, the webinar will be recorded and it will be also posted on our YouTube channel for other volunteers to have the chance to look through that when needed. After this training, you will receive a copy of the slides along with a feedback form. We kindly ask you to complete as we need to collect the feedback to make our trainings more qualitative and improve them. At the end, we will have a 10-minute Q&A session where you will be able to ask any questions that are of interest for you. They may not be connected with the topic. If you need any tips, advice about teaching, about holding sessions, about ENGin curriculum, I'm here and I'm really looking forward to talking to you, helping you, working on some issues together with other volunteers because we have common experience and I'm sure it will greatly help us. Also, during our training, you can write questions in the chat. If after the training you still have some questions, please feel free to contact me on the email address mentioned there. I'm open to any kind of conversations, so yeah, let's keep in touch. And as I have mentioned about the feedback form, it will be really valuable for us. So let's probably learn more about each other. Today we have quite a small group, so it would be great if you could unmute yourself, present yourself, maybe tell your name, the city or country you're from, and probably how long you have been with ENGin. Because here I've put another question for a bigger group. So let's change it and let's talk about how long you have been with ENGin here and how do you like your experience there. So you can unmute yourself one by one. Of course, if you don't want to speak, we're not forcing you. You can write just something in the chat. So it's up to you.
Hi, good afternoon or good evening, wherever everybody is from. I'm Paul, I'm from Miami, Florida, and it's been almost 3 months that I've been with ENGin, and I like it very much. My buddy that I got, we have very similar way of seeing the world, and we both like arts, we both like technical stuff, we both like riding bicycles. It's been a fantastic experience to be able to learn more about the situation going on in the war and the reality of they face day to day. That's it, I guess. My dream vacation for now is to go to Greece. If you want to see it.
Okay, I see. Great. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. Hope you will enjoy our training today. Who can be next? Who can go next?
I can go next. I'm Gary, and I am new. I've been a member for a while, but I haven't had a chance to connect with my buddy yet. I just got one. Actually, I got two. I know one of the questions is that we connect one by one or one-on-one, or if I've got two, is it up to the students? And I'm in, by the way, Bowling Green, Virginia. And that's about 45 minutes south of Washington, D.C. And moved here about 2 years ago from New York City.
Okay, great. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for sharing. Who can go next?
Okay, I can go next. I am Naomi Kwam from Douala, Cameroon. And I've been working with ENGin for close to 5 months. And I have one buddy, and we have been working very well. We left from intermediate to advanced, and everything is going very well.
Okay, great, thank you. Who can go next?
Hi, I'm Hope. I'm from Los Angeles, California. I have two buddies. I actually just met with one of them this morning. I've been with the program since I think May. I really enjoy both my buddies. I think they're both awesome. And my dream travel destination is Antarctica.
Cool, thank you. Who can go next?
Hi, my name is Kelly Sider. I'm about 20 minutes outside of Detroit, Michigan. I have been with ENGin for only about a month. I actually had my first meeting with my buddy on Sunday, so kind of trying to learn as much as I can before that happens. And in terms of a dream travel destination, I just got back from Italy last week, so now I need to think of a new dream travel destination, so it's in the works.
Cool, thank you. And you have a perfect background. I like it.
Oh, thank
so
you.
Much.
Halloween related. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Who can go next? Okay. Yeah.
Danny, and I am originally from Mexico, but I live here in the US, in North Carolina, for about 2 years I've been here. And I've been collaborating with ENGin for about 5 months, and I've been enjoying it a lot. Me and my body are really similar, and I think it's going really well. She's at an intermediate level, and right now we're working on her grammar and some vocabulary. But I'm kind of having a little bit of an issue with structuring the lessons and stuff like that. So that's why I joined this meeting to learn more about teaching methods and things like that.
Okay, yeah, I say just it's worth mentioning that today we will be talking about the structure of the lesson, but it will be more targeted on beginner learners. Because with beginner learners, there's not a huge possibility of having free-flowing conversations. That's why with beginners, we need more structure. We will talk about that today, and I hope we will have a perfect discussion about that. So does anyone want to introduce themselves? If you don't want, of course, we're not forcing, it's up to you. If you don't want, or if you don't have the chance of speaking, so no problem with that. Okay, then my name is Margarita. Seems to me I haven't introduced myself. I am from Ukraine. That's why I'm sorry for my English. I'm not a native speaker, but I have a pedagogical background, a pedagogical education. That's why I'm here. I'm responsible for curriculum development and different kinds of trainings for volunteers and for students. And with ENGin, I'm also mastering my English, my pronunciation, my accent. So I hope this meeting will be pleasant for you. Okay. And my dream travel destination is probably Spain. I would like to visit that place. All right. So today we are going to speak about beginner learners. And before that, I would like to hear your ideas, your opinions on how can you describe a beginner learner? Which qualities or what skills can you distinguish, or even problems can you face with beginner learners? Maybe you have faced it in your experience or just aware of them. So it would be great if you could share them. Just unmute yourself and speak if you can. If you don't want to speak, you can just write down your ideas in a chat and I will write them for you. So any ideas? Who is a beginner learner?
I'd say anyone who is like new to whatever they're trying to learn and accomplish. So someone who has just like very minimal experience in it.
Okay. What about their grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation skills, if we talk deeper?
I think you can identify when someone is just beginning to learn a language when they just know a few words, but they cannot really make complete sentences, or they don't know how to use connectors, or they often don't really know a lot of vocabulary. Yeah, I think that's how you can pinpoint if someone is a beginner learner.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think I agree with Johnny that a beginner can form just a few sentences with a very little vocabulary, and also the understanding is limited.
Okay, totally agree. Generally, two types of beginners can be distinguished. There are complete beginners, people who have not studied a foreign language before, like they have never done that before, or they have studied another different language, not English. So they're complete beginners. They don't know anything about the target language. We don't accept total beginners in ENGin. So it means if you are matched with a beginner learner, they have the minimum capacity. So they have some limited vocabulary range. They can speak not in full sentences, probably in shorter sentences. They have limited range of vocabulary, but anyway, they have this ability of understanding simple sentences, answering to them, so interacting with their volunteers in a minimum way. So that's kind of beginner learner. In respect of their pronunciation skills, of course, there are a lot of usually problems with pronunciation, and it all comes from the fact that in the Ukrainian language, we pronounce every single letter we have in the word. So if we have it written, we need to pronounce it. That's why for new learners of English with Ukrainian background, it's really challenging not to pronounce silent letters, to pronounce diphthongs, different combinations of vowel sounds together. It's really hard to pronounce combinations of O, U, G, H, T, for example, in the word bought. They will say it like bogged, something like that. So you also need to be aware of the background of your learner, because in this way you can understand what mistakes to expect from your learner because of their reliance on their first native language. Okay, thank you for sharing. I wanted you to meet with each other, to speak to each other, and to discuss the question of what challenges can you face with beginner learners. You can discuss them in the breakout rooms. For this activity, we have 7 minutes. So in this way, you will have opportunity to share experience with each other. You will come up with challenges. And during today's training, we will try to settle down all those challenges. So if you don't mind, now I will create the breakout rooms. When you have this pop-up window, you need to click go to breakout session and have a discussion for kind of 7 minutes. And please be ready to summarize everything you have discussed within your group. Hope you will enjoy meeting other ENGin volunteers because it's really valuable. Okay, I am creating them. So we've got 7 minutes to talk. Hello, Diane. Can you hear me? So today we're going to talk about how to work with beginner learners. Now our participants are finishing discussion in the breakout rooms. It will take just 2 minutes for them to finish, and they will come back to our main session, and we will start directly our training with tips. They are discussing the question of what challenges can you face with beginner learners. Can you unmute yourself so then we can speak to each other while we are waiting for others?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, hello.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sorry I'm late. I just finished up with one of my learners. We just went a little past the time. There were some things to continue with, but yeah, okay, so what challenges with beginners? I think just communicating, and because we're sitting at computers and not together in person, I can't act out as many things as I would like if I was teaching new beginners in a classroom where they can see me and my whole body to act out words. So that might be a little more challenging, but I think we can show pictures and stuff like that too. Yeah.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah, not always we can rely on real objects on realia in virtual world.
That's
Yes,
true.
but with these digital technologies can become even more easier because those pictures, flashcards, and interactive quizzes can make it as interactive as interesting as it wouldn't be in like the real face-to-face session. Okay.
You're right. Learning. Yeah.
Okay, so now our participants will come back to the main session, and
Okay.
we'll start talking about more straightforward stuff.
Okay. All right. Cool.
They will come back in 30 seconds. Just wait.
Okay.
Okay, so we're all back. Hope you've discussed the main challenges. Who can summarize what you have discussed within your breakout rooms? So who can speak to us? Who can share their ideas?
Well, unfortunately, me and my buddies, we don't have any experience. We're brand new beginners here at ENGin. So we've had intermediate students.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I can imagine just from personal experience that when someone's brand new, it's just the basics, being able to pronounce basic words and being able to be understood. That would be the most difficult part. For them to understand you and for them to say basic things, it'll be very slow.
Okay.
That's all I could say.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
In our group, we had, I work with intermediate, but we had 2 folks and they have begun to make sure that they understand how to pronounce the cities where their students are from and talk about using the getting to know you and asking questions and getting to know the families. They're very excited to begin to work with their students.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
I don't know if I can be seen.
Yes, Lori, we see you.
Oh, okay. Well, my student was described as a beginner. I would say she's an advanced beginner. My biggest challenge, and the thing we discussed in our breakout room, is how much grammar to introduce without overwhelming her. At the same time, I don't want our sessions to be just too basic and too boring for her. So I'm a little afraid I might be overwhelming her a little bit, but I keep asking her. Anyway, that's my difficulty.
Thank you. We'll talk about that today. Also, anyone else? Okay. So, as we have mentioned, with beginners, it's impossible, almost impossible to have a free-flowing conversation. That's why we need to have a certain structure for their sessions. If you follow the ENGin's curriculum when working with beginner learners, you could observe the following steps in our session plans. But of course, you are allowed to create your own session plans, your own materials. So when you are doing that, it's important to bear in mind that your plan ideally should, of course, have clear objectives. So if you establish a certain topic, you should be wandering around the topic, covering both vocabulary, pronunciation aspects of certain vocabulary units, connected with some grammar useful in terms of interactive about certain topics. So we need to have clear objective for the lesson. For example, by the end of this session, I want my learner to learn at least 10 new phrases about traveling or learn how to introduce themselves. Plus, I want to support that with some grammar material about pronouns and the verb to be. It's also really useful to have a warm-up activity. Beginner learners are really afraid of speaking, especially with native speakers, and it's really challenging for them. That's why, in order to relax them, in order to create more friendly and calm environment, at the beginning of your session, we suggest integrating different warm-up activities. As we are not in real classroom, we use virtual reality, that is to say, it can be really interactive and you can use various resources for warm-up activities. For example, you can show a picture, an image, and ask your learner to guess what you're going to be discussing today. You can show the picture and ask your learner for different associations with the topic. You can show 2 pictures and ask for the difference between the photos. On the next slide, I will show you different variations of warm-up activities you can use, but it's extremely important to involve your learner from the very second of your session, make them speaking from the very beginning, and warm-up activities are extremely useful in that case. With beginners, it's also important to review. They need to have repeated exposure to the material learned. So it means if in previous session you learned 5-7 new words or phrases, just try to review them, try to ask them. In the next session, maybe complete some kind of tasks if you have time, for example, to create that, or just show the picture and ask your learner to remember how this word is called. So more routine work is needed for beginners. They will get used to this routine, they will feel more at ease. And reviewing, of course, is extremely important at the starter level. Then comes the point of presenting new information. You can start talking about the new topic, introducing new vocabulary, new grammar, different activities that you have planned. Of course, at this point, it's important not to overwhelm your learner. So don't plan too much for one session. As with beginner learners, we recommend having 2 but shorter sessions, around 25-30 minutes, as for them it's really difficult to have conversation for an hour without stop. So of course we need to plan in advance, but not to over plan, trying to put so much information in one session. And then comes the production or discussion part. Beginner learners, they don't have so big vocabulary range in their stock, in their capacities. That's why for them to talk to you on certain topics, they need input. So they need some vocabulary input that they can use when producing and answering the questions and having productive discussions with you. If you are following or if you are planning using ENGin's session plans, here you will find some pre-teaching materials for us when we present new vocabulary that learners can use, or we even give them model answers, for example, the beginning of the phrase, that they can use in their production activities. That are extremely important steps to be followed with beginners. Examples of warm-ups. As I have promised, I took them from the session plans that I made. This is a screenshot from the session plans about handmade. So you can say, what things can you see in the pictures? Your learner will try to remember or will try to Google the names of these items. And then comes like a brainstorming activity. What can you do using these items? So you try to generate as many things you can do with that. Or let's talk about accommodation. Here you have 2 pictures. You ask your learners to compare them, to tell what they like most. Below you also see examples of different warm-up activities which are extremely popular. One of them is Kim's game. If you're using cameras with your learners and if you have background in your room where you have different items, I don't know, statues, some vases and some things behind you. So you can ask your learner to look at you attentively, then turn off your camera, move some of the items behind you, turn on your camera, and ask learners to remember what is missing or what has changed in the background. It will make them more engaged from the very first second of the session, and it's really fun. You may try complete different quizzes. We offer them extensively in ENGin's curriculum, in session plans for beginners. When, for example, if you're talking about time management, the first thing we offer is to go through a short test of 10 questions to see what kind of what management style you have. Another way is to play the game Would You Rather. Just create a few basic questions. Would you rather visit sea or mountains? Would you rather travel to space or underwater, and so on. The learners also love those activities. Another way is to play this game, 2 truths, 1 lie. When you ask your learner to create 3 statements, 2 of them should be true, 1 of them is false. You do the same, then you exchange those statements and you try to guess what information was wrong. That will also help you a lot to establish rapport, to establish connection with your learner. Another is to describe, compare pictures. We have some examples there. Look at the picture and guess what you're going to talk about today. So it can be different variations, but this involvement from the very second is important. First of all, to relax for them and to be ready to work hard with you. One of the principles that you need to bear in mind when working with beginners, that repetition is important here. Don't be afraid to feel super repetitive. Sometimes learners are confused, especially if it's your first or second session, but it will help. If you repeat, it will help your learners understand you better. For example, if every session you repeat with, and you start with a session, hello, how are you doing? What's new? In the second, in the third session, your learners will get used to this phrase. They will react more quickly. They will understand you better, and they will every time provide better and better answers to you for some routine questions. Plus, starting session with revision game, with reviewing, is also a good habit, because this repeated exposure of what you said, what you have seen in the previous session, you are going to have it today again. Here it gives them the sense of comfort and the feeling that they can do that, that they know what questions they are going to be asked. It's also really important to check for beginners' understanding, because sometimes volunteers can start speaking a lot or maybe more quickly because they sometimes can forget here about the fact that they are working with beginner learners. In that case, you can stop and you can re-ask. You can check for learners' understanding using some of the phrases like, do you know what I mean? Or are you following me? Have you got any questions? And so on. And please let your learner know that re-asking for clarifications is absolutely all right. So they don't need to be afraid to ask, to ask you to paraphrase if they don't understand anything. Also, to make it more comfortable for you, you can establish special signs. If you're using Google, if you're using Zoom, in Zoom, there are different reactions you can use. For example, if you're speaking and your learner understands that, well, I don't understand my volunteer, so they can use a special sign to let you know that you need to stop, that you need to paraphrase, that you need to slow down, and so on. Or they can put this if they greatly understand you, especially during first meetings, that can be extremely useful. When you are getting used to each other, when you're only getting acquainted. So using special signs can be really relevant and useful in that case. With beginner learners, whenever you are introducing new vocabulary or new grammar, they need to have kind of associations. Visual associations are proven to be the best ones. That's why in ENGin curriculum we offer a lot of activities connected with pictures, with flashcards. So giving just a long list of words to a learner won't work well. Instead, you can show the picture, try ask them to remember the word, and so on. And they really work for learners of all levels and all ages. Plus, ENGin's curriculum for beginners is supported by slides, by slide decks. That's also great because learners follow visually what you have been talking about, what you are discussing, though that also works well. In intermediate advanced, we don't offer session slides because we encourage more like open-ended conversations. With beginners, we need to do that to teach them speak properly and not being afraid not to hear something or forget. So showing images works well, especially great with words, with new vocabulary. When it's possible, it would be great to use real objects. For example, if you're talking about food and you're talking about fruit, yeah, you show banana, apple, real apple, because realia works even better in associative method. But of course, it cannot work every time, so just for you to bear in mind. When it comes to the point of grammar, with beginner learners, we highly recommend going through some easy, the most basic grammar points. Because for them to learn to speak well, they need to have some grammar basis. For that, in our session plans, or if you create sessions individually, we ask you to go through some grammar points. It's important to bear in mind, of course, it depends on your learners and your desire. So if you want to spend the whole session talking about grammar and it works well for you and for your learner, like it's your choice. But how we see it and how we recommend doing that is just incorporate some bits of grammar, no more than 7-10 minutes in a session, talking about the basics that will be useful for them in their productive activities in making their speeches. For example, in one of the sessions, you can go through the verb to be, and we also recommend supporting them with visual, different graphs, diagrams, for them to remember it perfectly. Yeah, not just to write down, but to have visual connection with that. On the slide, you can see some of the examples. They're really colorful. It's really distinctive and easy to understand of what's going on there. So you can read some examples together. You can ask them to model some sentences, to make up their own sentences. Yeah, but we don't go in depth with a lot of exercises to practice and so on during the session. If you want, for example, you can share some of the tasks, activities with your learner after the session. If you contact me or if you contact ENGin support team, we will share grammar books, grammar websites you can use, and you can find a variety of activities. You can share them with your learner and they can work in depth about the grammar to be able to speak with you better. That's about the grammar bit. So visual part, some basic things, and start using that from the very second. Yeah, so if you covered using past simple, try to ask them something in past, try to encourage using those structures from the moment they learn them. Here I suggest some practical tip. How about teaching grammar, not in an old-fashioned way, let's say like that. For example, if you want to introduce using the words never, usually, often, and so on, instead of just start talking about the rule directly here, where we put these words and so on, you can write down, for example, 3 sentences, highlight these words, ask your learner to read them, and ask them to analyze the sentence to see the pattern. In this way, your learner will create and will come up the rule by themselves. Yeah, so it will not be you who will give them the rule. It will be they who will look at the sentences, they will try to analyze the patterns, and they will create the rules by themselves. In this way, they will remember the rule 100%. They will remember it much better, and it will be more interesting. For example, like analysis is important. They are not just listening and forgetting them, but creating it by themselves works well. So here you could write something. 30% of teenagers never have breakfast. They eat fast food at least 2 or 3 times a week. And 75% hardly ever eat fruit and green vegetables. So you could ask, where do we usually put the word never in sentence? So we have the verb have. Do we put it before or after? The same about the word hardly ever. What about the phrase 2 or 3 times a week? So you just prompt your learner, you try to guide them, but they try to figure out the grammar by themselves. Okay. Also, you can include some rule, for example, adverbs of frequency, for example, usually, go. They go before or after a main verb, or before after the verb to be. So you could write a short rule, but it would work really fine with all levels, not only with beginners, yeah, when we just prompt. Okay. The same comes with vocabulary. I have also given you some examples. When you want to introduce some vocabulary, it's great if you can support it with some pictures. For example, here you wanted to teach them the phrases to become famous, to get a new job, to get married. So it can be made in this interactive way with cards. So you could save some pictures, show them to learners, and do it really quickly. That works really fine. Of course, with beginners, quite a popular case when they don't understand you. Yeah, you are telling them something, but they just don't understand. It can happen especially in first or second session when they're still worried and not confident about their English. So what we recommend doing there? Try to paraphrase. Don't try to use meta language here. So try to use easier vocabulary. Instead of saying, I was really exhausted yesterday, try to say, I was really tired yesterday. Slow down. Don't speak too fast. Try the method of situational presentation. For example, your learner doesn't understand the word tired. Let's imagine. Yes, instead of giving the definition, you create a situation and you're talking about the situation when you were tired. You may say something like that. Yesterday, I worked really hard all day. I started work at 8 o'clock in the morning and I finished it at 9 o'clock in the evening. I wanted to sleep very much because I was really tired. Do you understand now what the word tired means? And it's 99% that your learner will get the meaning of the word from the context. Situational presentation works perfectly with beginners. So you create a small story, but you put this word in the context. It can work greatly, believe me, and try it. If it's possible and you can do it really fast, you can Google and find the picture and show it to your learner in order to explain that. It's also worth typing the word in the chat. Yeah, so when you pronounce, especially complicated vocabulary, type it in the chat. Then your learner has a chance of copying it in a notebook or Googling. Of course, we do not encourage Googling, but if it's absolutely necessary, allow your learner go to Google and check the meaning of the word. Of course, it comes in extreme case when they cannot understand you by any means, but just it's possible. Don't be super upset or worried about that. Watching the videos. Of course, it can be quite complicated to watch, for example, TED Talks videos with beginners. But anyway, we need to start teaching them and making them get used to speeches, different accents, and so on. That's why in our curriculum from session plan around 25, we offer different video materials. Of course, they are chosen suitable for level. They can be played with subtitles. They're really slow. If the video is too quick, you can slow it down. In YouTube settings, you can slow the speed. If it's possible and the video contains the captions or the subtitles, you may allow your learner to read and listen at the same time. And try to reassure them and tell them that it's not necessary and they don't need to understand every single word, just the general idea, the overall picture. If you can do, and if you feel that it's necessary, before watching the video with the learner, you can take 5 to 7 words from this video that can help them understand the context, and you can give them these words before watching the video. And then in this way, they can be more confident that at least they know something about that, and it will help them. And you can make pre-discussion. Pre-discussion means that you are discussing the topic from the video before watching them. For example, if you're going to watch the video about unique places on the planet, here you can, before watching, ask, do you know any unique places? Have you visited any unique places? What is special about these unique places? Yeah, so just you prepare the ground for the learner to have in the video. That will also make them more comfortable with watching and perceiving information from the videos. If you have any questions, please, you can ask me on the way. I will be really happy to answer them or just type them in the chat. When it comes to pronunciation, I've mentioned that before. That's a difficult topic for Ukrainians as we read all the words. There are some basic tips, but they do work. So you can pronounce sounds, you can pronounce the words and make your learners repeat several times. You should pronounce these words in isolation, because with more advanced students, we recommend pronouncing words in phrases. With beginners, it works better in isolation. You can use minimal pairs. So on the slide, you can see minimal pairs: mouth, mouse, thumb, thumb, and so on. So you can practice with your learners for them to help to see the difference between the problematic sounds. For Ukrainians, the most problematic sounds are s and z, v and w, and different vowels. If you want to practice vowels with your learners, but you don't want to make it in a difficult way, a very popular case is to use this color chart. You can see it on the right. It's a very popular method, a very advanced method, when you associate different vowel sounds with colors. Green tea, silver pin, purple shirt. Again, color association works perfectly there. Finally, you can also try different tongue twisters. For example, if you see that your learner is challenged by sound s, you can Google just and find tongue twisters for sound. She sells seashells by the seashore, and you can practice. Tongue twisters are a really great tool for mastering and nailing pronunciation. Okay, let's move on. When you are speaking with beginners, we recommend using targeted questions. What are targeted questions? Targeted questions are the questions that they help them understand what directly you want from them. For example, who, where, what, when, why. So instead of asking, tell me about your day, you can ask, what did you do yesterday? Where did you go? Why did you go there? Who did you go with? So be more specific, be more concrete in your questions, because beginners cannot communicate in a free way yet, but they are on the way. Of course, it's really important to use positive reinforcement. Beginner learners will make mistakes. They will have a lot of mistakes. But whenever they have little success, or whenever they try and intend to speak in more complex sentences, or they used a cool word, you can try to motivate them and encourage by saying something, you're on the right track, or you're doing really well. So positive feedback is the best appraisal for them, and they will be really happy to hear from you that they are doing something great in a great way. So of course, don't overdo that, but whenever they do something in a good way, try to specify that. My next tip is to let them speak. It sounds probably not really understandable, as we said that beginners cannot speak in full stretches and so on. But we need to let them. We need to encourage them to speak. We need to support their speaking attempts in any ways. That's why in ENGins we have those speech decks with prompts they can use to structure their speech. They may be, at first, they may be reluctant to speak because of their shy. But try step by step, asking them more and more and more, and they will be more communicate with you. Avoid meta language. What I mean by saying that is basically I have said about that. So don't try to ask them, tell me sentence in past simple, or tell me the irregular verb, because beginners don't understand those fancy terms. Maybe names of tenses or structures. They maybe not know what is adjective or adverb. They don't need basically that. Instead, try to show it in the example. Yeah. So instead of it's saying it's adjective, you can say a beautiful dress. So beautiful. What dress? This is adjective. So you explain it in the example. Show them, demonstrate them examples, and they will benefit from it more. Yeah, and of course, preparation is a key. If you create your own sessions, try to prepare cool, engaging activities, or using ENGin's activities. They're really diverse, and step by step, you will see the progress that your learner is making, and every lesson you will start having more kind of without more freer conversations, and you will enjoy that a lot. Regarding correcting the mistakes, a very popular question, as I have said before, beginners might have a lot of mistakes. But if we start correcting every single mistake they make, they will be demotivated because they will have mistake in every single sentence. Instead, you can try to keep a record using a template you can see on the slide, for example, about the biggest mistakes that are really difficult, that are really important for understanding. For example, wrong pronunciation or totally wrong structure, totally wrong tense, or inappropriate word. So you can try to keep a record of learners' mistakes. For example, you can do it in a Google Doc and share it with your learner. And after each session, your learner will see the mistakes they made, and they will be able to analyze them and avoid them in the future. So kind of post-reflection on the mistakes would benefit a lot to learners. And another, you don't correct mistake when your learner is speaking. Instead, you are correcting it at the end, or you're sending it in writing. So your learner feels more confident when speaking because you don't interrupt him or her every second. Like that. So keeping the record, kind of that template can work really well. And of course, recommending learners reading books, listening to podcasts outside the sessions can greatly help them improve their English. So whenever they ask you for advice, recommend them reading a book appropriate for their level, listening to some podcasts, watching some videos. It will be useful for them. So there were a lot of facts, a lot of tips. I hope that you like them. Now probably it will be even more valuable if you speak to me, if you ask me some questions about what has been mentioned or about any other teaching and pedagogical things you are interested in. I will be really happy to answer them. So please, if you have any, because we have new volunteers who haven't had their sessions, probably you are worried about that, or any other.
Your tips were really good, especially I like the one about keeping a log of the words that they're saying, grammatical mistakes, any mistakes that they're saying, and not interrupting them, and then later going over that. That's fantastic. I had not thought about that. What I do sometimes is just write it down as they're talking, but it was great to, better idea, like have a log.
And if you have it in a shared document, and you both have access to this, your learners can check it. Maybe after the session, they can write down the mistakes. They can work on that better. They can analyze them. Yes, because if you interrupt the learner every second, even if it comes to intermediate learner, we work on fluency. We try to make them speak really. But if we correct every word, they will be really discouraged. They will be demotivated. So that can work well. Okay. We have got some questions. One of the is, what should I do if my learner talks more than I do? Usually like ideal ratio proportion for us, if your learner speaks 60% of the session and you speak 40, or 50-50, that's on average. Because we try to develop our learners' speaking skills, make them speak English. So it's perfect if they speak more, if they're willing to speak. Just try to support them in the way. But of course, they are also interested in some intercultural exchange. So feel free to share your ideas, but that's not a problem. That's not the case. So can I use associations with intermediate learners? Any samples you can share? Of course, that can also work perfectly with learners of all levels and of all ages. Associations can work really well. if you are covering the words from concrete topics, so where you can, again, pick up some visual representations like flashcards, images, so basing your associations on ENGin and images. Yeah, basically the same tip, just try to visualize that. Another association can be looking for a video set with different pictures related to the topic. It can be, I don't know, if you're going to talk about environment, nature. And on YouTube, there are a lot of videos with just some pleasant music. They're really short, and you can show them to your learner, and you can pause, you can discuss what feelings, emotions they can provoke in you. And on the way, you can learn new words, vocabulary coming from the video. That's kind of also good idea. Yeah, so Gary asked me to pronounce Dnipro and Dnipropetrovsk, where his body lives now. So I'm pronouncing that. Yeah, so Dnipro or Dnipropetrovsk. Okay, have you got any other questions regarding your sessions? Okay, I will share the slides with you right now after this training, so you can use them. And whenever you have any, I don't know, challenges, ideas, because sometimes volunteers write to me and say, well, I've come up with a great way of introducing new vocabulary to my learner, I can share it with you. And I'm always very happy and open for any ideas because they come from practical experience. So I'm really grateful to you for being here today. It was a pleasure to talk to talk to you. Sorry again for my English. I'm also trying to master it. And thank you. Thank you very much. Hope to see you in further ENGin trainings. Have a great day. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye.